Hi, hello, welcome back to the channel. So today I have got a review for you, and in fact, kind of got two reviews in one. So we have, over on the old book pile, we have Of Blood and Fire by Ryan Cahill, and we have The Fall, also by Ryan Cahill. So these are this is the kind of the first novel in Ryan Cahill's Bound and the Broken series, and the first novella. Now you can read these in any order you like. Ryan specifically says, there's two reading orders. The first one is where you want to get that big hit of action, and you get to see everything the magic system can do, everything the dragons can do, all combat in all its glory at the height of the power of this world. And then you go into the main story of The Bound and the Broken, where you get to see Kaelin kind of go on the journey that he goes on. Now, I actually read it the other way around, and I personally would recommend it that way. Now, what you get when you read of Blood and Fire and then The Fall is that you get the kind of slower and strong world building opening of Blood and Fire, which I think is a genuinely excellent opening to a series. It doesn't suffer from what some fantasy novels suffer from, where they have a very, very, very slow start. Oh, hello to the cat. This is Barry. He's you can only see his tail. I won't lift him up because he doesn't like it, but that's why there's often white hair on my t-shirt when I record. So, do you want to say hi to the camera? No? Okay. Sorry about that. So, if you read Of Blood and Fire first, you get this excellent start where you get to meet Kaelin, you get to be introduced to the kind of the small world that he inhabits, and the village that he lives in, his family, his friends, and then you're thrust into this adventure with him. And we're exposed to things like the magic system, the combat, the cities of the world as Kaelin is exposed to them. And then you also get a big epic climax at the end of the book. And then you go into more of the same in The Fall. So instead of going epic, slow down, epic, you get this gradual ramp up across the book of kind of action and thrills, and then at the very end of Blood and Fire you get an incredible action scene, and that's then followed by even more over the top and spell slinging everywhere when you understand the magic system because you've seen Kaelin learning how to use it. That's a very mild spoiler, but apologies in advance, Kaelin does learn to use the magic system. So let's talk about these books. I've talked about how you read them, or how I read them, and how I'd recommend that you read them. But let's talk about this series. So what is The Bound and the Broken? Now, 400 years ago, in the past of the world of Etheria, which is where the characters live and the series is set, there was kind of a cataclysmic event where the dragon riding knights that were called the Order kind of turned on each other, and they had this huge kind of dragon civil war, and basically the majority of them killed each other and killed them all off. And an emperor kind of rose from the ashes of the old world and took over the whole continent. Now, it's 400 years later, as I said, in the current day of the world, and Kaelin, who is kind of reeling over the loss of his brother 2 years before the story starts, is about to go through the kind of coming of age ritual of the group of villages where he lives. And this ritual is called the Proving, and basically they have to prove to the adults that they are the they're worthy, of being adults in the Glade, which is where Caelan is from. Caelan is teamed up with his two best friends, Dan and Rist. Dan is an excellent archer. Caelan's an excellent swordsman. And then Rist is kind of the smart one. So Rist loves reading and books, and he loves expanding his knowledge. And they are a really, really interesting group because they have three kind of very disparate personalities. But I think the interesting thing as well is that when we're talking characters, Caelan isn't a blank slate like a lot of fantasy protagonists, especially the farm boy comes from a small village and ends up saving the world kinds of fantasy novels. Caelan has kind of issues with his anger and his temper. He's still getting over the death of his brother. He's, mourning the people that he loses over the series as well. It's a genuinely really interesting character, and I think that you see that come out even in this first novel. Now, it does help that Of Blood and Fire is completely from Caelan's point of view. So while there are a few dotted other perspectives, we are pretty much exclusively experiencing the story through Caelan. And I think that while that is unusual in fantasy novels, most of the time we are seeing, 3 or 4 perspectives. For example, if you look at the original book in the Stormlight Archive, The Way of Kings, which is probably one of the closer comparisons for me, the stuff that I've read to The Bound and the Broken. In Stormlight, we're looking at like 13 points of view in the first novel, but as I said, we've got a very small number, and 99% of the chapters are from Caelan's point of view in Of Blood and Fire. So, as I was saying, it's quite different to a lot of kind of opening fantasy novels. They want to give you a few perspectives, but I think that this is really interesting because obviously we don't know the world of Etheria. We don't know that magic exists, let alone how it works, why it works, and what it can do. We've not seen a dragon in real life, and Caelan's not seen a dragon either. So he's kind of like how in a lot of TV shows they'll introduce a new team member, for example, to the like strike force or police unit or whatever in the pilot episode, and that new character, because they don't know anything, can be explained what the situation and how the team works and what the show is as the show goes on. And Caelan is that character. He's the newbie to the fantastical elements of his world, and we get to be introduced to those fantastical elements through him, through his eyes, and I really, really like that. I think that that's something that we don't always see in fantasy novels. I've kind of gotten used to the you won't know what's going on for 3 chapters, or you won't know what essential concepts of the world are for 2 or 3 chapters, 3 or 4 chapters, first 100 pages in a lot of fantasy novels. But I felt like because I'm seeing the world through Caelan's eyes, I'm always learning about something as it comes up, as Caelan finds out about it, which I thought was really interesting. The other characters in the book are really cool. I like Dan and Rist, and in future books we're introduced to more and more and more characters. There's a few other major characters in the first book that are really interesting as well. You meet people kind of all the way, the breadth from commoners to soldiers in this empire to ancient magical characters, and even kings and princes and guard captains. So that the characters that you meet are really, really varied. And one of the problems that you get with first time writers, and to be clear, Of Blood and Fire is Ryan Cahill's first ever novel. The fact that it is this good is genuinely shocking. So it's his first ever novel, and the thing you often get with first time writers is something that I felt from Sushin Liu's Three-Body Problem, which is that a lot of the characters outside of the main cast might as well be the same character, but so many memorable characters are in Of Blood and Fire. There's characters that have 2 or 3 scenes, like there's a porter in a castle that Caitlin interacts with, and that kid stuck in my memory, and when he came up again in a future book, I was like, oh, it's that kid. And it's really, really interesting. This is a completely non-spoiler review, by the way. I'll put in the episode title non-spoiler. Kaelin, as part of the story, Kaelin comes into contact with a group who are rebelling against the Empire. And they're kind of living their life on the run and going from kind of town to town, trying to drum up this rebellion. And Kaelin falls in with them through complete circumstance. And when he falls in with them, something that they've been trying to hide from the Empire, this kind of magical artifact, bonds with Kaelin. So he's forced to stick with the group and stay with them. Now, I don't really want to go too far and too deep into the plot because I kind of didn't know much when I read it, and I really liked that. It was a really interesting story to follow. So that's kind of as much as I would say you need to know. This book came out in 2021. Mad, it was only 2 years ago, and there's already, over 1,000 more pages in this story, which is incredible. We're talking like faster than Sanderson writing pace at this point. The next 2 books in the series are called Of Darkness and Light and Of War and Ruin. There is another novella which goes between Of Darkness and Light and Of War and Ruin, which gives you the background on Dane, who is a character who's introduced in book 2. This I'll give you the score now. This was a 4-star read for me. I don't really know what you could do to make it a 5-star. I think they really just did need more perspective. I would have liked to have seen more perspectives. But the book is excellent. I love all the characters. I love all the POVs that we get in this book. One of my favourite things is Cahill kind of seems to know when to switch characters. This comes up a little more in the later books, which are very, very much multi-POV. But he'll do this thing where I'll read an excellent chapter about a character, and I'll be like, oh, there's some like real tension here. But he won't let that tension evaporate and switch to someone else. He'll do multiple chapters in a row with the same character. And then just when you kind of maybe a few pages away from being like, oh, I'd like to see what's going on with so-and-so, he'll take you to that other person. These books feel like there's probably a lot of feedback given on them at the alpha and beta reader stage. And for my money, they've really pulled together a really excellent series. I will do reviews on the other books, but for now, I'll say, as I said, of Blood and Fire was a 4-star read for me. I absolutely loved it. I have read all the books in the series that are currently available, and I've loved them all. But as I said, reviews forthcoming. Let's talk really quickly about The Fall. So this is only 90 pages. This book is actually free on Ryan's newsletter. So if you sign up for his newsletter, he'll send you a copy of The Fall. It's automated. It will literally be in your inbox in seconds. So if you're sitting there and you're thinking, I don't know if I want to commit to another fantasy series, I'd like a taste. Well, firstly, Blood and Fire is on Kindle Unlimited. And even when it's not on Kindle Unlimited, I think it's usually about £3 on Kindle. So I would definitely give that a shot if that's the sort of thing that you think you might be interested in. But if you want that really zero investment read then The Fall is kind of your first way in. This is also very well written. It's got, you kind of swap between 3 or 4 different POVs in this book, as it follows kind of the start of this big cataclysmic event that I talked about that changes the whole of Etheria, where the Dragon Guard, or the Dragon Riders even, go to war. It's like civil war with each other. And you get to see the POV, one of the big POVs in there is a major character in the present day, because Dragon Riders live an extremely long time. And that's one of the really interesting things about this series, is that characters who are able to use magic have extraordinarily long lives. So you get to see a lot of characters who were around when this cataclysmic event happened and have this kind of first-hand knowledge of what went down. Can't miss the coffee. Now, yes, I'd recommend reading both. Unlike some fantasy series where the novellas are skippable, I think that the novellas that Ryan has written are, firstly, very interesting. Secondly, they cover in kind of more detail events that you'll learn about in the books. So while you could kind of skip them if you were like, I refuse to read novellas, I'm just going to read through these main books. I don't think you'd be missing anything. But some really interesting character development for Dane happens in The Exile. You get to meet a lot of characters that, on a personal level, in The Fall. So you get to meet characters like Eltuar, who is kind of this, mythological figure almost in the main series. He's this, leader of the Dragon Guard. He's this, legendary warrior. But you get to see him and see his inner thoughts and see his POV in The Fall. And I think that that's a really, really interesting kind of detail. You get more of that character. So I would really recommend reading these novellas. And like I said, you can start with The Fall, and it is a completely zero monetary investment way to start with this series. You can read it in an afternoon, and it's quick, it's easy, it's breezy, it's a great read, and it'll give you that flavour and show you the magic system at full tilt, so you'll know if the magic and the world is something you'd be interested in. So then you can go on and read Of Blood and Fire. However, my recommendation, get yourself a month of Kindle Unlimited. You can get free trials for it constantly. I'm currently on a 3-month free trial. This is like the 7th one that I've had. Get yourself a free trial of Kindle Unlimited and just start with Of Blood and Fire. Read until the end of the proving and see how you feel. I think that this series is probably tied for, if not currently, my favourite fantasy series of all time. With the caveat that I have not read The Wheel of Time, which apparently it borrows heavily from. I have not read Malazan, which is the number one fantasy series for like half of booktube. So, there's a lot of stuff that I haven't read. But for now, I prefer The Bound and the Broken to Sanderson's Cosmere and Robin Hobb's Realm of the Elderlings and Raymond E. Feist's Rift War, which are the 3 big fantasy series that I have fully read. Well, I haven't read all of Robin Hobb's Realm of the Elderlings, but I've read 4 books, and that's enough for me to kind of make that judgment currently. If I read more of her books and reassess, I will do an update to my top fantasy series of all time. So, let's end on that note, that it is, if not tied for, maybe actually my number 1 favourite fantasy series of all time. The other reviews are forthcoming, so if you read Of Blood and Fire, or you've read the whole series and you want to see what I think about the whole series, then again, those reviews are forthcoming, so keep subscribed on the channel and you'll get the notification when I upload them. if you've got some recommendations for books that you think that I should read, then please drop them in the comments. I'm trying to build a massive TBR that is all the things that I've missed from the decade plus where I was not reading seriously because I was addicted to my phone. So please drop them in the comments, and I will put them on a list, and I will be working my way through that list probably over the next year or so. Thank you again for watching. Please, as I said, like and subscribe if you want to see the future video reviews or for just more bookish content. And I will speak to you soon.